this has been a nice opportunity to sort of merge these initiatives. So the office I work in has been coordinating the resilience program of the U.S. chairmanship of the Arctic Council, so for the past 2 months or so. And I'll talk a little bit more in detail later in this presentation, but I think there are many initiatives across the federal government and outside the federal government that are trying to capitalize on the timing of the U.S. chairmanship to raise awareness about Arctic issues and also try to address Arctic issues here at home. So one of those initiatives that we've started is to build on the U.S. Climate Data Initiative and Climate Resilience Toolkit, which I'll talk more about in a minute if you're not familiar with it, to do a better job of consolidating U.S. government data that can help inform actions to enhance climate resilience in the Arctic. So today I just wanted to provide you some background and some context for this initiative and propose some ways that interested members of this group could help provide us some feedback. There we go. So the Climate Data Initiative Climate Resilience Toolkit came out of the President's Climate Action Plan, which was released 2 years ago now. And I just want to call your attention to these two initiatives. I mean, it was really supposed to be a comprehensive plan for how the U.S. government would respond to climate change. But two of those initiatives that were announced, it announced that the administration would launch a climate data initiative that built on an executive order that was launched shortly before to enhance freely available open government data. And so that initiative would aim to leverage climate-relevant federal data by making it more freely available, really focusing on the purpose of trying to make that open data available for stimulating entrepreneurship and further innovation by the public and by the private sector. And then the plan also announced a toolkit for climate resilience that would centralize tools, best practices, and services online, virtually, and that was more aimed at decision makers and the interested public. So the Climate Data Initiative, it was first launched over a year ago now in April of 2014, and there have been various pieces of that have been launched over the past year and some months. It can be found at data.gov/climate if you haven't seen that already, and it builds on the data.gov website, which is supposed to be the federal government's open government data platform. So really is just building on this website to specifically call out the data sets that can help the U.S. respond to climate change and just more appropriately tag those data sets and consolidate those in a more organized way. So it's been ongoing with leadership from OSTP, but the project management for this has really been coming from a group at NASA and have really provided a lot of leadership in getting this off the ground. And then the Climate Resilience Toolkit is a separate but related website at toolkit.climate.gov that was launched in November of last year, 2014. And NOAA has really taken the lead on developing this. It presents a 5-step framework for dealing with climate resilience, and it also provides more detailed information about decision support tools, and really just provides detailed information about who those tools are intended for, what specific information can be found, and just really provides as much detailed information as possible about these tools. And then the nice thing about it is it also provides what are called these taking action stories, which really demonstrate personalized experiences that people have had with addressing climate change. And you know, as of now, there are dozens of these taking action stories that you can find by region or by sector. So many resources that are available to decision makers and the interested public at large. So I want to emphasize that despite NOAA and NASA having a key leadership role in developing these websites, it's really emerged as a federal interagency initiative. There have been many agencies that have been involved in developing the content. So currently the websites are organized around, well, actually they're organized around 5 themes to be added this summer. So there have been 7 interagency expert teams that have been developed around these 7 what we're calling themes. So coastal flooding, that was the first one that was launched back in April of, I think it was April of 2014. That was a NOAA-led team. Food resilience, which was led by USDA, ecosystem vulnerability, which was led by DOI, water by USGS, and human health, which was the most recently launched theme, I think in April of this year, was led by CDC. And we have 2 themes, energy and transportation, which should be added, I believe, in the next month or so. Additionally, there's a cross-cutting tribal theme, specifically for the climate resilience toolkit that the Bureau of Indian Affairs is leading. So that will include information specifically of interest to tribes. And then finally, now we have launched this theme team, and I think a couple of you on this call are part of that team, organized around Arctic. So it's a little bit different from these 7 themes that are laid out here, and really cuts across all of these themes. But really the goal is to collect content for both of these websites that would be specifically of interest to people in the Arctic. So I want to switch gears a little bit. That's a brief overview of the Climate Data Initiative Climate Resilience Toolkit. And I also just wanted to quickly go over how this fits into the broader context of the Arctic Council chairmanship. So climate change, as I'm sure many of you know this already, but climate change is one of the 3 main priorities of the U.S. chairmanship. And to support this priority, a suite of initiatives have been developed that's really focused on enhancing community and ecosystem resilience. And these initiatives are organized around this 3-step framework of really enhancing our scientific understanding of resilience, and then building on that, developing and promoting tools and services that foster greater resilience, and just trying to provide better access to these tools. And then calling on Arctic Council member states, permanent participants, other members of the global community to implement actions and policies on the ground that enhance our climate resilience in the Arctic. And then there's another initiative that I just wanted to touch upon briefly that this kind of relates to. So there was there are a lot of portals out there, but there is one that was launched in April 2015 at the end of the Canadian chairmanship of the Arctic Council. It was a U.S.-Canada-led initiative, and the website, it's a website that really aims to bring together data and information, but also really serve as a community of practice and allow communities and practitioners, but communities in particular, to come together and use it as a forum to share lessons learned and access tools for on-the-ground action. So the portal is currently housed at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, and because all of the Arctic Council member states have signed off on this portal and sort of see it as the main mechanism to really build at least community-level resilience, the U.S. has committed to continue building on this portal and supporting University of Alaska Fairbanks and collecting information that will help build out this portal a little bit more. And so all Arctic Council member states have committed to take inventory of their relevant national level climate data and tools that could support the portal. So I hope I haven't confused all of you too much yet. So now we're really, I've talked a little about the Climate Data Initiative, Climate Resilience Toolkit, the Arctic Council Chairmanship, and this adaptation portal, and we're really trying to connect all of these different pieces here. So going back to the Arctic theme for the Climate Data Initiative, Climate Resilience Toolkit, we anticipate that it would have a lot of benefits. First of all, it helps the U.S. to meet its commitment to inventory its climate data and information that will contribute to the adaptation portal. It strengthens the Climate Data Initiative and Climate Resilience Toolkit websites, and it encourages private sector innovation that benefits the Arctic, because that's really one of the main goals of the Climate Data Initiative website in particular, is to really just put everything out there for entrepreneurs in the private sector. And finally, we're hoping that this can raise awareness about the Arctic and the lower 48, which is really a cross-cutting theme of the U.S. chairmanship, is to really use this opportunity, at least here in the U.S., to raise awareness that we are an Arctic nation. So there's a very quick timeline that we're looking at. We have been asked to prepare this theme for a launch at the end of August, so it doesn't really give us a lot of time. And so to meet that August launch, we're really asking our theme team members to reach out to their agencies and collect content that would be relevant for this theme. Hopefully by the middle of July is the deadline that we've been giving them. So it's a very short time frame, but I think we're confident that we can work with this timeline just because we already have the proper protocols in place, and we have a great team that's already helped launch a number of other themes under the CDI and the CRT. So we're hoping that we can put it together within that time frame. But even though that we're hoping that this will be launched in August, there will be a lot of ongoing work associated with these. Even the themes that have already been launched, I mean, the work continues, and the teams really work to continue adding content as it becomes available. So we foresee that the work will not end in August, but you know, we can launch some preliminary. We can launch a theme that has some high-quality priority data sets and tools, and that we can continue adding to that in the future. And so we have a number of Arctic theme team participants. This is just a sample of some of the agencies that we've had, and we've already met a couple of times. So it is a team of federal agency representatives, and we're hoping that maybe by using the data collaboration team, we could get some input and feedback from some of our non-federal partners as well. And finally, we're also developing a list of framing questions. So the 7 existing theme teams, or the 5 theme teams and the 2 that are going to be added very soon, they have a number of framing questions that their respective collected data and tools should help to answer. So the Arctic theme team is looking at ways to develop similar framing questions for an Arctic theme that can help inform which data and tools should be a part of this theme, but also just give some clarity to somebody who's visiting the website what kind of questions we're hoping to answer with the data that we're providing, and also especially helps to provide some framing for private sector innovators in terms of what sort of questions they should be thinking about as they're looking at the data that perhaps we need more answers to. So a couple of starting points have been suggested. We started looking at the existing theme team questions and thought maybe we should build on those. Another suggestion has been to start with a list of Arctic stressors that are really unique to the Arctic region, like building some questions around issues like melting sea ice, changing permafrost patterns, et cetera. So finally, bringing it all together, we're hoping that we can engage the IARPIC data collaboration team, potentially by getting some feedback on our initial framing questions once they're developed. We welcome any and all suggestions for content for the themes. That includes data, tools, taking action stories. I think one of our main objectives post-launch in August is really taking stock of what we have and trying to get a better sense of what our data gaps are. And also, as I mentioned before, this might be a good opportunity for obtaining a non-federal perspective, since these teams have been mostly focused on getting federal agency data out there and have been developed by federal agencies thus far. So I think that is all I have, and I'm happy to take questions.
Any questions for Sarah, please?
Sarah, this is Molly McCammon with Alaska Ocean Observing System. And I guess my question would be, and I work a lot with the LCCs. I work a lot with all of the federal partners here in Alaska, and they're on our board. But how is it that you are working with sometimes there's not a straight path between headquarters, federal agencies, and those here kind of on the ground. And so I guess my question is, what pathway are you using for that?
Yeah, so we do have a couple of LCC members on our team. I believe Aaron Poe and Dave Pear. So we have a couple of LCC members from the region, and I'm glad you brought that up, because we really are looking to the LCCs to help us develop some of these on-the-ground questions that people are trying to answer.
Okay, and then I guess my other question would be, there is a lot of I think there's a lot of non-federal entities, such as IARC at the university, that we're partnering with on a number of things, and our data portal that are boarded as long-term investments and commitments to, and how do you see leveraging those?
So I don't think we're constrained by including only federal data. I think the idea behind the Climate Data Initiative originally was that we should be taking efforts as a federal we should be taking initiative as the federal government to make the data coming out of our agencies more available. So there was a bit of a focus on federal data, but I don't think we're constrained to that. I think if you look at the data.gov website, there's a range of data on there, both federal, state level, academic. So I don't think we're constrained to that. It's just I think our first priority was trying to make federal government data more available, and also just because we had a little bit more control in terms of improving the quality of the metadata records as the federal family. But certainly I wouldn't say we're constrained to that. Does that answer your question?
Well, you're not constrained, but on the other hand, it's not necessarily, well, it depends. Your priority is federal data, which I think is great, trying to get that more available. That would be a big accomplishment right there.
And I think if I could, Sarah, what part of the reason why we're bringing that to this team as well is there is a desirement, especially with the establishment of the new Arctic theme, is to look at this not only in terms of the focus for the government data, but also that expansion. Because quite a bit does reside in organizations which are not federal government.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things I've been thinking about a lot is I worked on the Alaska chapter for the National Climate Assessment, and when we started it, it was basically people sitting around in the room and saying, well, who has what data, what can we pull out? And there was no real systematic way of saying these are our indicators, these are our long time series, this is what we're going to be using as our kind of our, in a way, kind of similar to the Climate Reference Network that National Weather Service has. And I think in terms of following up now, how do we set up some kind of also a climate data package that we can actually kind of follow those trends and those data sets, which I think would be a really valuable thing for this initiative to promote. Does that,
yeah,
can I
yeah.
that there?
I guess, Sarah, that's part of especially taking the approach of what are the Arctic stressors that might be those organizational elements to focus around supplying and identifying most relevant data sets that might address each one of those, correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So that's I guess the idea behind the framing questions is really just focusing and focusing our content collection a little bit more to really answer some key issues and some key questions. In terms of the trends, I think that's a really interesting idea, and I think there are folks at USGCRP in particular who are thinking about this question a little bit more broadly, and how we can connect things like the Climate Data Initiative back to the National Climate Assessment for, well, and future assessments, and how we can make these things more linked in terms of using the data initiative to track some key indicators that can then feed into the climate assessment. So they're by no means there yet, but I think it's been identified as something that we would want to move towards into the future. But if there's something that we can set up now specifically for the Arctic, I think that would be a great thing to provide over the next few months and maybe during the course of the chairmanship if we're able to do that.
Okay. Other questions for Sarah?
Yeah, Sandy Starkweather, and I mean this really just builds on Molly's comments, which I think are really valuable, that there's also the international data, and while I realize the federal data will be the priority and it's more difficult to grapple with data that's not in your jurisdiction, thinking about how the connection with the Arctic Council chairmanship might clarify some pathways for improved integration of international data as well.
Yeah, I think we've been struggling with this question a little bit because we haven't done any international outreach for this particular item, meaning adding the Arctic theme to the CDI-CRT. So I think we're leaving that door open, that we would welcome international data, but I think we're really using that adaptation portal that I mentioned earlier as sort of the mechanism where we would consolidate our international data. I think this is the way that we've committed to doing so on the U.S. side. So, and it would be, I think, as simple as providing a link between the CDI-CRT websites and the portal. But certainly I think that's something that we haven't quite figured out yet.
Other questions, please.
Yeah, hi, Sarah. This is Peter Griffith at NASA Goddard with the Above project, and I think I'm on your mailing list, but I haven't actually attended any of the meetings. Libby Larson from our team here has been present, I think.
Yep.
So having a myopic view of just what we're doing with Above, which is not which is by no means everything that NASA might contribute to this. We're probably several years out from having, we're just starting this field campaign.
Mm-hmm.
And we have, in fact, in order to make these sort of typical kinds of observations and understandings that come out of a NASA basic Earth science more relevant to society, to decision makers, we're intentionally engaging with groups like the LCCs in Alaska, the territorial governments in Canada, to be kind of our bridge organization into relevance to local groups. So I guess two thoughts. One is that an awful lot of data that NASA generates ultimately could be very useful in this regard, but it's by no means presented in a toolkit fashion.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of a general comment, and then the second level would be just regarding this Arctic boreal vulnerability experiment. If you have an immediate need, is there a need for us to continue to engage, because we're a couple of years out at a minimum before we start going from field observations, satellite observations, and into products that would be generated in consultation with an LCC that would be, in fact, more in a toolkit form.
Right. So I guess I'm not sure if I know enough about what what your work plan is over the next year or so. But probably if there are no data sets produced within the next couple of years, certainly we'd be interested in that later on in a couple of years. I think the only thing I can think about is if, depending on how you're engaging some of the territorial governments in Canada, and you said you're working with the LCCs, I don't know to what level you're engaging with these entities, but if there are ways you're engaging where there are some, concrete things coming out that could contribute to these taking action stories, that could be a potential way to contribute some content before the work is over in the 2-year time frame, I think you said. But again, I don't know what the extent of that engagement is.
It's pretty deep with some of these organizations now. We're only just in the process of reviewing proposals and selecting our science team, which won't be announced until August.
Okay.
A large number of the proposals come with explicit collaborations with National Park Service scientists, with territorial scientists. We have strong engagements, but they haven't formally been selected, much less started yet.
Okay.
And then the first round of funding is for 4 years, but it's a 10-year project.
Okay. Yeah. So then, in that case, there's probably not much that could contribute for this immediate time frame of trying to launch something in August. But I think there could be some things maybe in the fall or the winter time, depending on what ends up getting selected and announced. I think you said in August. So I'd love to keep in touch with you and Libby just to see what comes out of that process. But I think probably in the next month or so, based on what you're saying, that there probably won't be too much coming out of the above project.
Right, and I guess Libby, well, there's lots of NASA people on this, so I've got blinders on now, and I'm just thinking about above. So we're a few years out, but we might have a nice story for you about how NASA is working with you know, Bureau of Land Management or Fish and Wildlife Service, you know, whoever ends up getting selected.
Yeah.
That sounds good, Peter. This is Joe Cassis. And Sarah, we're going to have to draw this to a conclusion, but what I'd like to let everyone know is there is a process by which Sarah has put together for supplying content and making suggestions on content, even though the framing questions have not been completed yet. For example, looking at Arctic stressors might be a starting point, and looking at this in terms of international contributions. But I will work with Sarah over the next couple of business days, and we'll put these opportunities out for your comment and feedback. And if necessary, we need to have a separate telecon to do that in the next 2 weeks. I'll be glad to set that up. So thank you, Sarah, very much.
Thank you, Joe. And feel free to get in touch if anybody has any questions.
Absolutely.